So welcome everyone to session number 10 of Living the Truth. And I'm calling this one being an expression of peace. So I thought this was appropriate given what's going on in the world right now with the war in Ukraine. Although, as I've said before, there's been wars in many other places that we haven't quite focused as much on, wars in Syria and Yemen and Burma and so forth. But this one seems to, because it's in Europe and it's involving a country with major weaponry, including nuclear weapons, it seems to have really captured our attention. So you could say in a way that the world feels like it's in crisis, or at least our world feels like it's in crisis. And often when this happens, there's a shift in consciousness that what can accompany these kinds of moments in the world, in the pandemic as well, but now it can play a role in our actual awakening, that this can be part of a shift in consciousness. There's a book that I just love by an author, Joanna Macy. I don't know if you can see that, World as Lover, World as Self. And the author's, if I can zoom it in there, Joanna Macy. And in this book, I mean, there's probably newer editions. I've had this for a while. She says, "It is my experience that the world itself has a role to play in our liberation. Its very pressures, pains, and risks can wake us up, release us from the bonds of ego, and guide us home to our vast true nature." So it's kind of another way of looking at this. I did a group earlier with, there were some people from the group there, but it was more intended for, new people to the practice. And there I focused on ways that we can relate to the stress by using with the practice, right? Ways of responding and dealing with stress and anxiety. But this talk's a little different. Here I'm talking about this kind of the world. A crisis in the world is actually playing a role in our awakening, releasing us from the bonds of ego, as Joanna Macy says. And another quote from Adyashanti: "One of the greatest possibilities of a human incarnation is that each of us can willingly participate in being a redeeming presence in the world." So there's another way to come at it, is seeing that as part of our awakening and as part of living this awakening, or living the truth, as I've been calling it, is that we willingly become a liberating or redeeming, redemptive, you could even say, presence in the world. So our humanness becomes a vessel through which the realization can function through. And there's really a natural pull for this. The more you dwell in this kind of dimension of your being, in other words, the more of the ego that falls away, and the less one dwells in the egoic mind, and the more one dwells in this still aware presence, I guess we could call it, the more that we become a vessel through which redemptive presence can function through. So I invite you to really reflect, just to begin this process, on how the war in Ukraine has affected you. What emotions have come up? A variety of emotions can come up and with a crisis such as this, the images that we're seeing in the media. What emotions have arisen for you? And then how have you related to those emotions? Depending on what they are, you may relate in different ways. Depending on your practice, you may relate in different ways. Have you opened to these emotions? Felt them? Or have you distracted yourself from them through some kind of busyness, or perhaps numbed yourself to them? I know with the pandemic, the amount of drugs and alcohol that were consumed went up tremendously. So really just to feeling the emotions and allowing them is really a key part of this practice. As they say in the self-compassion training, that the feeling is the healing. And I think it's also, you could say the feeling is the healing and the liberating. I know I have felt a deep sadness has come up at times. That's been a common emotion for me that's arisen, sadness. I could see glimpses of even this this sense of the heroic Ukrainians, and really give them lots of javelin missiles and Stinger missiles, and this is great. They're standing up to this huge superpower, and so that kind of comes up. That's kind of the narrative. I could see myself being pulled towards that as well. So just opening to all of the emotions and thoughts, the whole package of what arises when we open to the sorrows of the world in this way. And when we open to it, rather than distracting or numbing, avoiding, when we open to the sorrows of the world, we can realize our interconnection, our mutual belonging. Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese Zen monk, as many of you know, Thai never took a side in the Vietnam War. Never took a side. He said, by not taking sides, you allow compassion for all human beings. And he actually lived that. He was training what he called social service workers to go in and provide health care and other types of care to everybody, regardless of which part of the war, what part they played in the war. And he suffered a lot because of that. When Thich Nhat Hanh, or sometimes he's often called Thai, this is a kind of name that people, endearing name that people have for him. When Thai was asked, what do we need most to do to save our world? His answer was, what we need to do is hear within us the sounds of the earth crying. What we most need to do is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying. Again, really opening to the sorrows of the world, the same way we open to our own pain and difficulties. Joanna Macy writes further in this book, World as Lover, World as Self. Pain for the world, the outrage and the sorrow breaks us open to a larger sense of who we are. It is a doorway to the realization of our mutual belonging in the web of life. It breaks us open to a larger sense of who we are. So this is another way that we can explore our relationship to what's arising around the war in Ukraine. Because we're each a direct manifestation of this interconnectedness. The world, in a sense, is our larger body. We don't stop at the skin. The world is alive, and it's our larger body. So when our true nature awakens, and we live that truth, the actions come out of this sense of unlimited wholeness. So this is in contrast to acting out of an egoic mind, which is limited, right? And acts from a sense of separation. Here we act from unlimited wholeness. When we act out of ego, peace is really elusive. And really, war is inevitable. We're separate. We see ourselves as separate within the egoic mind. So there's an us and there's a them. There's an evil and there's a good. Those dualities. So let's again take the war in Ukraine. Let's assume that you disagree with the war in Ukraine. Living the truth doesn't suddenly mean that you agree with Putin and what he's doing in Ukraine. You can still disagree, but it's different to disagree and just see their egoic version of what they're doing, the egoic version of their wrongness, you could say, or to disagree and see that they are also an expression of true nature, also an expression of their true nature with the potential to be conscious or unconscious of that. It's really important that we remind yourself that you yourself can't be other than you are. And the same holds true for everybody else. I'll never forget the moment when Matthew Flickstein, my teacher of many years, said Adolf Hitler was just doing the best that he could, given the causes and conditions in his life. It couldn't have been any other way. There's a Jewish man saying this as well. That just shocked me at the time when he said it many years ago. He was intentionally trying to create to kind of stir me in a sense, to really look deeply. So even when we're confused, that's also our true nature. When we're struggling with what is, that's our true nature. You never become other than your true nature. So we're living this paradox, and I know this is all, and what I'm saying is very, very challenging for the egoic mind to hear, but it's coming from a deeper place. It's really, we're living, for the egoic mind, it all appears as a paradox. But when we see with the eyes of the infinite or true nature, we see that we're embodied expressions of it. We realize that everything is true nature. So for us, as we practice with these teachings, we become conscious of our true nature. We could become expressions of the infinite, of our true nature, as opposed to simply egoic minds living divided from a sense of division and separation, struggling and separating us and them, and good and evil. From that perspective, you can only be good if you can find someone that's evil. You have to have evil. Otherwise, how could you be good? So it's breaking free of that duality. We then can become a liberating presence in the world. And it's really the power and the responsibility that we all have. Knowing from this deeper dimension of our being what is required in the moment. What is required in the moment. And I've said this before, it tends to arise spontaneously. It's an impersonal engagement with the world. It's not about us, it's really about everybody else. So the reason for doing becomes about the whole and not a personal thing. It's not because you want to do good. It's instead a natural unfolding that arises from your deepest expression. Another quote from Adyashanti, from a talk he gave called Being an Expression of Peace, where I got the title for this talk. We're most powerful when we're being whatever we want to find in the world. This is our first responsibility. We are most powerful when we are being whatever we want to find in the world. This is our first responsibility. In a really concrete way, I meant to share this book as well. Another author, another book by Thich Nhat Hanh called Being Peace. Now Thai has written over 100 books, and Being Peace is still by far the number one selling book. And for me, Thai really represents this expression of peace in the world. He's passed away fairly recently, but his work and his messages continue to resonate. Just to see him take a step felt peaceful. I remember I went to a retreat with him, and I think I've told this story before, but it just really represents his how he expresses peace. Where there's, I don't know, between 1,500 and 2,000 of us in a football stadium kind of dome, And you can imagine, you know, when the kind of commotion. This was at the very beginning of the retreat, because subsequently we all walked in silence. But at the very beginning, we're all there, and there's a lot of energy. And wow, we're here for a retreat, and it's Thich Nhat Hanh, how special, and you know, everybody's chatting and getting to know people around us, and you can imagine the noise, right? It's you know, like kind of before a hockey game begins, kind of without the, you know, the loud music, and all of a sudden Thich Nhat Hanh just kind of appears. He's a man of, you know, small stature and size, and him and his monks and nuns just kind of appear, and they just start slowly walking across the stage, and you could just hear the noise and the energy just settle. It was just his mere presence and peaceful way that you know, he didn't have to come in and ring a bell to quiet people down, or nobody had to, you know, yell into a microphone saying, "Everybody, please pay attention." All he did was walk into the room, and everybody noticed it. My eyes were drawn to immediately as soon as he kind of peeked around the curtain that was kind of behind the stage. So that's another, you know, in his Peace in Every Step, really for me illustrates this idea of being this liberating presence, this expression of peace in the world. Joanna Macy, in this book, World as Lover, World as Self, talks about other ways of engaging. And she's got what she calls the work that reconnects, which there's quite a bit of information on this. It's kind of what you call these days an open source body of work, which means you can look it up on the internet. And it's really rooted in the experiential teachings. And her work is focused on deep ecology and environmental activism. But it's also appropriate for peace work, or work around racism, or work around economic exploitation, and so on. There's a group called White Awake that uses her work around anti-racism work. And her work began in the 1970s. There are workshops that she did on sorrow and empowerment. So in the work that reconnects really reminds us of our intimate connection with the web of life, and then our responsibility to take action on behalf of this awakening. So I want to play a short clip. It's kind of so you can meet Joanna. I've also done retreats with her way back, and I'll share this. Where is it? There it is.
This next selection is a presentation of the plot line of the workshop, a kind of roadmap to where as a group we will be going. I find this very helpful, indeed important, to present early on in the workshop, say soon after the introductions, because it helps people to understand how the different parts of this work, from gratitude to honoring our pain for the world, to seeing with new eyes, how they follow on each other, parts that are quite different in character. And to see this ahead of time helps them to trust the work, to know that they're not going to be stuck in one kind of activity for the whole time, and to build confidence in where it's taking them. So here you see me present what I call the spiral, because this sequence of the work takes the form of a spiral, coming back round on itself, but never quite to the same point. Big Mama says, "You are my children, and we are being hurt. But we have to ground ourselves in the joy of life." That opens us up. That opens up our heart mind. So that's why the initial part of the sequence of the work that reconnects is gratitude. And I see it as a spiral. You know this, how many times we've looked at that way. We began ever again with gratitude in the sequence of the work, in the plot line of the work. Because gratitude, as Big Mama knows, helps us to be fully present. And then when we're really present and grounded and we're held and we know we're held in her, then we can open to what we're also carrying, which is so intolerable and unspeakable, what we're doing to our world and to other beings. And not only that, but what we're doing is going to hurt the beings for millennia. So there's that to take in. There's something huge to take in, and you're fearless about that. Or maybe you're scared like I am, but you're scared and fearless. How's that? You're ready. Like going off the diving board. You're ready. So to the way to understand making room for that truth speaking, truth feeling, we've been calling it to honor our pain for the world. This is the most subversive thing you can do. This is what the industrial growth society and the corporate military empire wants us to not do. They want us to numbly follow orders and just see what next we need to buy to make ourselves feel good or look pretty or smell right or get someplace fast. But we're going to pause and we're going to honor our pain for the world, because this is a jewel. This is a jewel we carry inside us. This is your bodhisattva heart. This is essential to our waking up to our true nature. This is like a doorway we go through to see the immensity of who we really are. We are so much bigger than the industrial growth society can itself imagine, trying to turn us into robots and consumers, when our true nature is this, and she's going to help us honor our pain for the world, because it is in doing that that we find most convincingly our interbeing with her. And then we get all the way through, oh my gosh, if I can suffer with my world, if I have that capacity, then I am huge. And then nothing's going to stop me. So we come to this part of the plot line, which is seeing with new eyes, and we open to the scientific and spiritual and perceptual revolution of our time, because something so terrific is happening at this dawning of the third millennium, just as we are about to pull down the curtain. So we don't know. Are we doing deathbed attendance on this planet and conscious life on this planet? or midwifing a new birth? We're not going to know. But they're very similar. It needs the same quality of loving intention, the same kind of fearlessness of being there. And so then we come to applying it. How are we going to live our lives? Going forth, and this Doug and Fran and I were sort of conceiving this intensive, because each one is different. What do we want? How do we want it to be this time? What are our goals, our glimpses? What this time? Fran reminded me that for 3 times straight, I had mispronounced this word, and he heard me say growing forth.
Not bad, is it?
Well, maybe that's really more suitable. Yes, because each step we become different and more.
Yeah. It's wonderful seeing her speak. She's quite a impactful person when she does her workshops. So when we do this work, as she says, it's the opening to and honoring the sorrow, the pain in the world. That's the doorway to awakening, to seeing the world with new eyes. And the other aspect of it is wisdom. Is wisdom. We're bringing back the cognitive mind. I mean, she used some concepts there in what she was saying. So we're bringing back the use. It necessitates the use of the cognitive mind. So while the thinking mind was so central in maintaining the ego at the center, and we've kind of broken away from that, we run the risk of then saying, okay, well then the thinking mind it doesn't have a use. But once we get beyond its role in maintaining the ego at the center, we can then bring it back, kind of come back to it as a way to access wisdom. We're bringing the thinking mind back into our beingness. And I must say, when I began to do this, it got confusing, right? Like, how do I know that that's wise mind or just egoic mind masquerading as wise mind? You can see how that kind of confusion can arise. But we need to learn to use the mind as a tool, but at the same time not, fall under the spell of the egoic mind. And of course, I struggled with this. It was difficult sometimes to distinguish. Of course, there's no such thing as these two types of minds, but I kind of use it for illustrative purposes. And I found that wise mind did not kind of announce itself like an earthquake or thunder, as it's often quoted in the Bible. God kind of announces his plan. It comes a earthquake or in a thunderous way. For me, I found it to be kind of a small voice. And that's also in the Bible, actually, in God speaking to Elijah, that's where that phrase, a still small voice, comes from. So for me, it felt more like a still small voice. To distinguish. I would look for that stillness is kind of a telltale or an indicator. So it wasn't coming from a place of argument or struggle. There wasn't a lot of that kind of argumentative, confrontational energy associated with it. It was very clean, very simple, still, small voice. It really felt like it was anchored in being. It was kind of anchored in something. It was anchored in something beyond the struggle and confusion of the egoic mind. Came from that still presence that's always already there, the background of stillness behind all the noise. And as you know, from that place we can go into the confusion of the world, or go forth, as Joanna Macy says. We just know what to do. This is the operation of prajna, or in Zen they call it heart wisdom. And it can take some faith, to rest in the unknown so that the known can speak itself. Because there's that tendency to wander back into the mind and then get lost in thought. So I'm just going to end with Joanna Macy has the 5 vows that she starts retreats with, and these kind of really struck me as very helpful vows that one could commit to. So I'll just read them. To commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings. To live on earth more lightly and less violently in the food products and energy I consume. To draw strength and guidance from the living earth, the ancestors, the future beings, and my brothers and sisters of all species. To support others in their work for the world and to ask for help when I feel the need. And to pursue a daily spiritual practice that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart, and supports me in observing these vows. So I found those to be wonderfully helpful aspirations or commitments. Really, you could call them mindfulness trainings. Kind of just check in. Oh, am I doing something in this way? Am I living on the earth more lightly? So I'll leave it there and open it up for any questions or comments. Oh, Micah just said goodbye. I missed that. Okay. Yeah. Bye, Micah.
Well, I'll open it up, Stephen. You touched a very delicate point today with Putin and Ukraine and so on.
Yeah.
And when I do the metta meditation, when I get to Putin, I just cannot get there.
Mm.
And then the reflection was, am I feeling compassion for Putin? What's the ultimate intent? Is that for me, so that I feel better about myself? Or is that for anybody else? Is that for him? Is that for the Ukrainians? I mean, sometimes I think, what about if everybody did this? I mean, when you throw away plastic or use a plastic cup, and so how about if everybody did it? What would the consequence be? Well, if you all did meta medication to Putin, would that change anything? I mean, even if 7 billion did it, except the 50 oligarchs and military that support them, will that still change anything? So I'm being, the end question is, what's the ultimate intent? Because I have to know, why am I doing this? Is that for me only or for anybody else?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So meditation is one way that we practice to align ourselves with the attitudes of loving kindness. Right. So it's not so much a practice of awakening. It's a practice just to kind of align ourselves with the natural inherent compassion that's already there, but often gets covered over, in our daily struggles with life, our egoic struggles. So it's simply just a practice of alignment with compassion. And some people never get to the difficult person, even if it's their neighbor. They can, it's a process of opening and opening and opening of the heart, and that's really all it is. It's not meant to. It's not meant as an activist activity that's going to in any way change the world. It's of course, if everybody practiced and aligned their hearts with their inherent compassion, then of course that would have an impact on the world. If then we started to live out that alignment, that aspiration. So yeah, if loving kindness for Putin is difficult, then put it aside, and take it as far as feels appropriate for you. That's all I can say on that. These are hard, teachings to, especially for the mind to take in. Because I'm speaking at this, I'm kind of speaking at the ultimate level, right? But it has a tremendous impact at the relative level. But I looked at Thich Nhat Hanh, and he lived his compassion, not taking sides. I know I have discussions with friends where I try to not take sides, and people get angry with me. and start throwing out statistics and historic things. It's a huge context. This war happens within a huge context of conditionality. We have no way of knowing all the conditions that came together that resulted in this war. I don't know all the, even a fraction of them. Now, I know a little bit about the history of Second World War and the aftermath, and just little bits here and there. I know a little bit about the West and our economic exploitation of the world, our historic imperialism. Not all these factors come into play. We can't just say it's Putin. So many factors coming together. It's a wide context of conditionality that's coming together. So I can only open my heart and compassion, for what arises to me. But what arises to me is to help people that are fleeing. That's just what arises. It arose spontaneously. Other people may find what arises for them is something completely different. But really to look at where is it coming from? Is it coming from this your true nature of compassion and wholeness? Or is it coming from just contributing more to a sense of division and struggle? To really look deeply at that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Emmanuel, for opening up and sharing your struggles. I think a lot of people are struggling right now. I know that I found this conflict very confusing. Confusions come up, frustration, anger, like why do we keep on doing this to ourselves and to the earth? And this is just the conflict that's that our society is paying attention to. It doesn't even speak to the structural violence and everything that exists in our world, and the conflicts that we don't really pay attention to as much. And I found it very frustrating and sad, actually, quite sad. And I sit with these emotions, and it's come to see that these emotions are coming from the egoic mind, for sure. The sense of that I'm separate from other people, and but I think I think doing the meta, I think that's great. I mean, even just doing meta for yourself, we're all interconnected, I think. So you're doing meta just for yourself and your loved ones, you're doing it for everyone. I think it's, even if you can't give it to Putin, that's a really very human response, I think, and you're still giving it to everyone. And even the egoics, you have this egoic thing, this egoic mind, but in the end, the egoic mind is it's consciousness as well. It's just pure consciousness, and seeing that and just being with that ego, like that's the egoic mind is a suffering part of ourselves too. That's what I've come to see. It's this suffering part that thinks it's separate from the wise consciousness, but actually it's not. It's actually connected to it. It's actually part of it, part of this wise consciousness. And I don't know, I've found it helpful myself to, during those, to take time to do meditation. And I've been doing a lot of walking meditation lately because I find that's really, I don't know, something with the movement. It's I guess I feel I need that. It's different for everyone. But yeah, it's enabled me to see that there's everything that's going on is really, it's consciousness. It's consciousness that's, that's being revealed to us. And I feel like when I can be there and kind of feel that, it's, I don't know, I feel like just this more like, kind of compassionate thing, even for like Putin and the oligarchs, because there's this longing for power that they have, obviously. And that longing for power is like, it's just separation from consciousness. And it's so like, that's really painful, I think, like that. Living in that state is extremely, that's just, it's so limited, and it's so, it's difficult. I don't know. Even though that they're causing a lot of suffering as well. It's, I don't know. Just, by doing that, I feel like, looking at things as like everything is consciousness. Everything is the Buddha. Actually, everything is the Buddha. Like even, we're all the Buddha. It's just seeing that, and even the seeing is not something that I can change. It's just, you can see it. Some people see it and some people don't. And I feel like if you see it, then it's like, okay, really, all I can have is compassion. That's all that's left. It's just, I want to be compassionate. I don't know. It's strange. Anyways, that's where I'm at. And I really thank you, Manuel. I was really touched by your sharing there. So thank you.
As I'm listening to this very very human, these very human things and concerns and thoughts, I'm taken back to, Manuel is really, again, thank you for that, because it's really part of the big questions, like, how do we do this, for whom, and what is it accomplishing, or where does this lead, kind of thing. These are very, very human wonderings, and I'm reminded of, taken back to some things I've heard about in the talks, Stephen's talks before, and one thing that came up was right action and other rights. I can't remember them, but there's right action. So and so it's not enough just to be compassionate. I think that's where it took me, Manuel, is to say, yes, these evil people are suffering beings. Otherwise, where does this behavior come from? It can't be, they can't be peaceful beings. They're suffering. But that's not enough, really. If we really plug into what we know and what's right action and right thinking, I think that's where this compassion and this sort of centering takes us. And I think that's perhaps one of the maybe helpful for some to go there and see it from this angle, from this sort of centering and seeing what's right and really tapping into what we know to be true. Then we know what to do and what to think, and and how to act in the world. So hopefully that's what comes up for me, and I hope that helps.
And the right thought and right action, or sometimes called wise thought and wise action, follows the first of the Eightfold Path, which is right view or wise view. So all the actions and it flows from view. And the wise view is seeing dukkha, seeing that there is dukkha, that there's a cause to suffering, path to the cessation of suffering, seeing that there's impermanence, everything that arises, it's conditionally arising, decays, it arises and fades, just as human beings arise and fade. Everything's that's conditioned. And that there's no self, there's no essence to any of that. So it's really, we keep in mind that wise view as we proceed into our wise action, wise thought, as the Eightfold Path unfolds for us.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to. Sorry. I
Go ahead.
Maureen. Sorry.
Carl.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay. Okay. So, in my mind, what's happening in Ukraine right now, there is evil happening. Innocent people are suffering. And it seems to me that Putin is the cause of a lot of the suffering. And if we think of everything as being conditional and his actions just arose from conditions that were present, then that's like absolving him of any responsibility for this nightmare that we're witnessing. And I have a hard time with that, and so I don't know what people think about the whole concept of evil, and whether a person like Putin, well, maybe isn't evil, but is behaving in an evil manner. And doesn't he at some point have the choice to do the right or wise actions and not do what, or not be making decisions that he has been making? Anyway, I struggle with that. I'd just like to know what other people think and feel.
It sort of goes where I was thinking too, Maureen. I kind of think of the hungry ghosts of in Buddhism that I'm trying to be maybe in my view of Putin, and my view of being compassionate towards him is trying to kind of understand him. And I think of, again, that's why I think of the hungry ghost and what he's striving for and how he's sort of deluded in many ways. And I don't know where I don't know where it gets me or where it gets the world, but it's where I've been going with this, because I certainly, for me, I have a hard time, wishing him well. And so when I think of compassion, I'm trying to think of, like, why would somebody do this? What would lead somebody to do this? And it certainly is I mean, I guess I guess we are all capable of it, right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I remember my mother had a story about the Nuremberg trials, where the lawyer who was trying, I don't know what Nazi it was, but ended up somewhere in the process of questioning him. And as he was questioning him, he actually passed out. But he said what happened was that he realized he could be that person he was questioning, and yeah. So I don't know whether this is Buddhist or whether this is the whole idea of of Thich Nhat Hanh's poem of the pirate and the little girl's been raped and and all those things. But those are the things that swirl in my mind, and I really don't have any solid, coherent frame or paradigm in which to pitch it all in. It really is at many levels so utterly horrific, that I think about it all the time, at this point. I mean, and I think, one of the reasons why what's going on there has taken everybody's imagination, as opposed to what went on in, let's say, Somalia or the Sudan, is that we have this kind of very close history of 2 world wars there, and the same potpourri of people or cultures, that it could go in a way that just becomes catastrophic. But yeah, I guess the idea of metta, in this case, how I try and practice it is not necessarily like may you be happy and free from suffering, Vladimir Putin. It's more like, I just don't know why you're doing what the fuck you're doing, Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I feel deeply that it's based on the interconnectedness of everything and the non-dual nature of everything. There's only wholeness, and which is totally beyond comprehension, like what that actually is to us. And even causes and conditions, what you see, I feel like those are actually themselves are actually when you're seeing them for what they truly are, it's actually consciousness. It's actually unconditioned. And it's the way that the universe operates is a mystery, and there's a lot of suffering, which is a natural human thing. I don't think like it's possible for Putin. Everything is just arising. And it's just difficult to, and we are not in control of, we're kind of just along for the ride. And in the case of Putin, it's just really difficult to see that, I feel like, because there's just so much, just because he's causing a lot of suffering, and we really naturally care about people that are suffering so greatly. Yeah. It's difficult.
Well, and to further confuse me,
Sorry.
I saw a clip by Thich Nhat Hanh yesterday, where he kind of redefined violence not as being the physical, superficial appearance of the act, but more into the intent of the act. So he found that, and these were his examples, if you put somebody in prison because you want ultimately to protect him, that's not violent. And he also used the example of the parent that he didn't say violent admonishes the child, but that forcefully say, because he's trying to protect the child from himself. For him, that's not violent either. So I kept thinking, I mean, how much do you push this? I mean, that's a little bit like the bomb in Hiroshima in the Second War. The argument was, yeah, we'll kill 10,000 here to save 1 million. It's really confusing.
I just might respond to that a little bit. I think Ty was probably pointing to the notion of, because non-harming will always be a precept for Ty. But if there is no intent to harm, even though there may be some harm, that it's not considered breaking the precept of non-harming. Goes to in Buddhism, you go to the intention of the act rather than the result of the act. But
A little bit like, yeah.
in the case
like
of the bombing, that would be intending to kill. So that would, in the Buddhist precept, that would be breaking the first precept of non-harming.
Oh, but it brings also the question of the trolley dilemma.
Mm.
Do you pull the lever or don't you pull the lever? If by pulling the lever you deliberately kill 5, but you save the 50 people on the trolley, it's I don't know if there's a Buddhist answer to the trolley dilemma.
No. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wise action.
I don't think we'll be resolving this tonight, but, and I don't think that's what we're trying to do here, but I think I'm going to end with the poem that Carl mentioned. That's what I was looking for there for a moment, was Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Call Me By My True Names, because he's really pointing to the degree of interconnection. And yeah, anyway, I'll let the words in the poem speak for themselves. So the poem is called Please Call Me By My True Names by Thich Nhat Hanh. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope, The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river. I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am a frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl refugee on a boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. I am also the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. I'm the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up and the door of my heart could be left open, the door of compassion. That's a poem that I think in these times could be almost something to read at the beginning of or the end of one's meditation.
Ty also has a great poem that he wrote in response to 9/11 that's along similar themes. It might actually be something worth checking out,
Yeah.
pointing to the interbeing, the deep interconnectedness, like you said, Stephen. I just wanted to mention if people want to check it out, they might find it useful.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for engaging in such a difficult and challenging dialogue and supporting each other so wisely.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Stephen.
Stephen.
Privilege and an honor to be here with everyone. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye.
Night,
Night.
everybody.
Bye.
Stay well.
Yeah, you too. Be well.
You will. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for coming. Take care, everybody.